Good morning or good afternoon, I guess it is now. We have been meeting all morning with our directors of athletics, with our presidents, talking about what is the appropriate path forward. And we've also been paying attention to what is going on around us, both in the world at large and the sports world. And as you started to see this morning, you've seen a number of conferences have made the decision to cancel. We have come to the same conclusion, and we will be canceling our event. It is incredibly disappointing in terms of the kids having a chance to compete further, because I know this is a pinnacle event and is something they look forward to. But simply from a public health standpoint, this seems the appropriate course of action. Take questions.
We'll go ahead and take questions. Tom?
Yeah, Jon, I take it then you were full go up until maybe an hour or two ago?
Yeah, we've been going around all morning. And so, yeah, and it's been fluid all morning. But I've just fairly recently made the decision that, it would be appropriate to no longer continue the event.
In the back.
And this has been done, and I would say this has been done in consultation with our presidents and our directors of athletics.
Straight in the back.
Did you consult with any other conferences about their decisions leading up to this morning, checking in on what they're doing, so this could be a collective thing?
Yeah, we've been been communication for well over a week on different actions people were taking. Clearly, we stepped out early on some procedures we were implementing for our tournament. And then last night and then today unfolded, we're taking temperatures of what was going on around us as well. But at the end of the day, it's a decision we have to make.
Second row, Rachel.
Jon, the Utah Jazz were here 2 weeks ago, and 2 players were recently diagnosed with coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Were any of the teams using any of the NBA facilities
Yes.
here in the building?
Yes.
What's going to be the protocol
Yeah.
for these teams that use those facilities, like locker rooms and
Yeah.
cleaning rooms?
And I'm going to ask Glenn Komorowski, with CEO of the Cleveland Cavaliers, to assist me with that. But let me walk you through what we've done as soon as we got information on that. First thing we did was, okay, where would players have been, participants have been? Went back, generated records on cleaning, what occurred there and how many times it had been cleaned. We're talking a period of really 8, 9, 10 days. And so what we're hearing, and I had discussions this morning with the director of the Cleveland Board of Health as well as the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, and they both were confident with the fact that given the cleaning regime and the distance between when the Utah players were in the facility, that shouldn't pose a point of view. We had made the decision that if we would have moved forward, we were going to close down that locker room and not utilize it anymore, even though we didn't believe there was a risk posed by that. Then we had begun discussing implementing perhaps further protocols, medical protocols, screening protocols with our student athletes, and we're discussing that as we ultimately came to a decision. And then I'll let Len wade in with perhaps some other information that sheds more light on this.
Yes, and as Jon referred to, we go through an extensive sanitation process after every event. There were actually 5 events that occurred since the Jazz were in town prior to the Mid-American Conference coming here as well. So that process has been repeated continually throughout that, not to mention when the usage is actually being taken place by the Jazz, by the MAC. Beyond that as well, the timeline, obviously with the affected player with the Jazz, from what we're understanding based on incubation period and actually where symptoms appear, and given the length of time from when the Jazz were in town, which was March 2nd until when last night occurred, would suggest that the risk was very low that the affected player actually had contracted it and had that while he was in Cleveland.
The additional point of discovery we went through was, were there any people involved in the operation of our event that could have had a direct line of contact with that player? There were none. All of our backstage people were different than what was occurring in and around the NBA event. So based on the science of it, we felt very comfortable that we were in a reasonable spot.
Front row, you had a question? He's on his phone. Jason, go ahead.
In regards to the NCAA tournament, what kind of conversations have you had with the nation's governing body? Is
Yeah.
there a thought to, will that tournament happen next week? What has been your read from the national level in terms of the market?
Yeah, I don't have an answer on that. We have been in fairly constant communication with them. Yesterday, as planning was going on to hold the NCAA event, and they announced they would move forward with the limited spectator thing. Obviously, they were in touch with us as we are slated to host next week. One, on just general operational ideas, and then second, because we've implemented procedures in and around it, and they were looking for some feedback on how our event was going. So Jeff Bacon on our staff, who was our point person, spent significant amount of time with those folks yesterday. We have no information on what their decisions might be going forward. I would direct those to the NCAA.
Just real quick, if the national tournament happens, who's the bank?
Yeah, our automatic qualifiers would revert back to the regular season champions.
Okay, front row.
I guess historically, has this ever happened? And also, if you could tell us how you feel at this point, because this is unprecedented.
I have no knowledge of a similar type of situation, at least on this scale. I'm sure conferences have dealt with various things from time to time, but to have the nationwide, in fact worldwide, issue we're all dealing with right now, I don't know. How do I feel? I don't even know how to answer that. You know what? You're working the problem. You're working the issue. We're concerned with making sure we do everything possible to mitigate risk factors for our students and for our student athletes and for our fans and anyone interacting in and around our programs. And so that's, I don't know that I feel, I'm focused on, that's the job right now. That's the job of our presidents, that's the job of our directors of athletics, and all of us involved in this enterprise.
PJ in the back left.
John, you mentioned that the regular season winners would represent them at the NCAA tournament. Assuming that tournament does go on, will you have any say or will you have any communications with the school as to whether or not you want them to pull away as a result of coronavirus, or would that be at their discretion if they want to continue to play?
Well, as we move forward, I'm sure our schools will have various conversations on that. A lot of what will dictate this moving forward is, as we're starting to see, we're having state, county, city rules and regulations starting to come into play. We're having, as we're all public institutions, we're having state regulations or mandates coming down onto types of behaviors, on whether or not people can travel or not. I think all of those things will go into consideration. Ultimately, the institutions will have to make some decisions on what they do going forward.
Jason?
With the NBA news last night, were there any protocols instituted this morning for the two teams scheduled to play at Akron and Ohio? Were there any medical checks done?
Yeah.
Or any extra, protocols instituted with those two teams coming in this building this morning?
Yeah, and part of the reason that we had started to implement a delay as we were starting to begin those. Our schools had been doing various checks anyway, but we were implementing a little more formalized health check, whether it's temperature, and I don't have in front of me the protocols of the other things that were going to occur, as well as we were going to have the athletics director or their designee visit individually with each student athlete and ask whether or not they were comfortable in competing or not. And so that we have a chance for the students to have a voice in this on whether or not they wanted to continue.
So that was personal checks and diagnostic.
Yeah. Now, how far down the road we were getting on that, I don't know, but that's where we were headed. If we would continue, those were going to be put in place.
Hey, John, beyond basketball, have you guys made a determination on spring sports?
We have not. We had a brief discussion today, but most of the discussion was on basketball. Those discussions will continue. I hope we come to some conclusions on that within the next couple of days.
Further questions? Raise your hand. Go ahead.
The safety of players and fans
we've not waded into that at this point in time. I've in fact got an AD's meeting coming up, and we've got a laundry list of things we've got to talk about. And so, you know what? We're disappointed on a lot of levels. Obviously, first and foremost for the student athletes and our fans. We're disappointed about the fact this event has been a pretty significant economic driver within this community, and acknowledge that. And let's face it, we're going through an event right now that's going to cause interesting issues with regards to that. So I won't claim to know what we're going to do, but acknowledge that there's a lot of people hurting.
An additional comment to that here.
Yeah, and as it pertains to our part-time workers, ushers, ticket takers, security, otherwise, who would have otherwise worked the event, they will be compensated as if they had worked.
Further questions, raise your hands. Okay, if seeing none, thank you all for coming. We appreciate your help and assistance. If there's anything further we can do to help from a public relations perspective, please reach out to us and we will help. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Safe travels.